Guys, this is Alex and the very first episode of my vocal vlog Singerstory. And this episode is all about Tony Harnell, lead singer from TNT, Skid Row, Starbreaker, Mercury Train, and other different projects. And the great thing is that Tony is one of my favorite singers. I had developed my range, stamina, grit, rasp, this hard rock, heavy metal sound in my voice, listening to his voice actually. And we've become friends on Facebook, and it's the great opportunity that Tony has time to make this Skype call, to make this conversation happen. And also, the brand new album of Starbreaker called Dysphoria finally came out, and you can check it. And that's a great album. I'm listening to this record a few times. Perfect melodies, perfect harmonies. That's the great stuff. So once again, thanks a lot, Tony, for sharing your vocal info with singers from all over the world. And let's back to our Skype call. And what
Yeah.
about the first teaching? First lesson you had. First coach, first teacher.
I started singing professionally when I decided to do it. Finally, someone heard me by accident, and it was a couple of musicians, and they invited me to rehearse with their band when I was just turned 17,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in college already studying photography. So I went and I did this rehearsal, and everything changed. My whole world changed that night, and I went through the first 6 months of semester of university and got very bored and went and left and put all my attention on music.
Mm-hmm.
So I was singing professionally very quickly. So by the time I started, from the time I really started till I was singing 4 nights a week every week with a professional band was only a matter of maybe 6 or 8 months.
That
And
was a cover band or
yeah,
original material?
well, I was 17 years old, so I mean, I didn't know what I was doing except, I mean, I was kind of trying to write songs, but I was in a cover band and we covered a lot of different material. We played 3 hours a night, three sets,
Wow.
everything from Pink Floyd to Rolling Stones to Judas Priest to Led Zeppelin and everything in between.
Everything
And
like classical hard rock and rock and
classic
roll
rock.
stuff.
Yeah, just classic rock. And that's how I
Cool.
learned. So I was singing a lot before I had any lessons. And it was through that process, I taught myself by listening. And that's what I talk to people a lot about is I didn't know that the way I was listening was the key. Um,
Uh-huh.
I didn't listen to music the way normal people do, and I didn't know that. Um, I actually would put headphones on, and I would listen in a way that I was actually putting myself in almost the body of the singer, and then spitting it back out again internally. Even if I wasn't singing, that's what I was doing. So I was
Uh-huh.
listening. I was listening, and I loved it so much. It
Cool.
was everything to me. So that's how I learned how to sing, and that's what I brought with me into the cover bands. But there came a point after doing this for maybe 6 months or so where I started to realize what my weaknesses were. Um,
And what exactly? That's super interesting.
well, they were different weaknesses, and for example,
The
I had a
main.
very
The main.
well, I had a very high range, and from a young age, it almost felt like, and I have to make this clear, I never studied music. I'm completely by ear, and
Got it?
everything I do is by ear, and I think that's a good thing. And we should talk about that
Okay, that's interesting.
later on, and I'll
Good.
tell you why I think it's a good thing, and I think it's not a terrible thing for singers as well. It's okay if you know how to play and you know how to put chords together and you understand basic theory, but I don't think it's necessary to have a really uh, focused view on like what your
Mm-hmm.
highest note is. I think that gets in the way, and I think it obstructs people's thinking.
Yeah, I
Uh,
gotcha. Cause like the roof, that's the high note, that's the high C. Oh, that's
when
tough.
when
Because
yeah when
without
people
this,
Yeah, when people are too aware of what their highest note can be, that's not good, because every day your voice changes a little bit.
y-
You
that's
feel
right.
higher. Some days you feel like you can go, and if you have this thing in your head of uh-oh, there's that note. Um, I like to kind of feel like that it's all based on a feeling. It's all
Mm-hmm.
based on a physical and emotional feeling that you're just following through with. But my to get back to the point, I felt that I was really so I sang high, and I could sing I could sing through my break. I was very aware that I had a break. I had figured out a lot of things on my own with no lessons, just from listening to really good singers. So
Uh-huh.
I figured out that I had a break, but I could sing through it. So I could sing up through it, and
Like
I could even
connected or like
well,
smoother
I
here
don't
and
like to
there?
call it connecting. It wasn't so much connecting it as it was. Yeah, I mean, the way it is like, it's easy to sing high if you have a high register, because
Exactly.
you can throw all your energy there, right?
And if you have
Um,
the resonance spot, you feel like, oh, there's the voice, and you can like hit there.
once you can throw your energy into that high register, it's easier. But when you're singing a lot of different singers' material, their power their power might sit lower than yours, and
Exactly.
and that's actually a really tricky thing for singers to understand, because it's typical for people to think that if they can't sing something well, they have to lower the key. And what I learned from going to my voice teacher, which I will get to that in a minute,
Okay.
was that he would actually I would go in, and he would say, you know what, your sweet spot sits higher than this guy, so let's raise the key. And it was already a high song oftentimes, right?
For
And
example.
for example, and this ties into why I even wanted lessons in the first place. My mom finally bought me for my 18th birthday. She bought me a bunch of lessons with a teacher who was not famous at the time at all. Now I maintain he's the best in the world, and he doesn't put out videos, he doesn't put out tapes, he has no secretary or assistant. He answers the phone, and he's booked up solid every day. He's expensive, and his clients are Lady Gaga, Christina Aguilera, Bono, Mick Jagger, and the list goes on and on and on and on.
Whoa.
Sebastian Bach. And I was his first signed singer, and when I was a kid. So anyway, I from singing in these. So my mom bought me these lessons because I said I really want to get better. But
Mm-hmm.
from singing in these in this cover band, I was realizing that I did Zeppelin great. I did the lower stuff like Pink Floyd really well. I did Judas Priest. That was like really easy for me. His voice and his range and mine were like the same in a weird way
Got
when I
it.
was, especially when I was younger. Um, and I could copy his tone. It was just a very fun thing for me because I could do all of his songs. But if they asked me to do Journey or Foreigner or
Uh-huh.
stuff like that, it became a little more difficult. I could do it, but I couldn't really maintain the tone I wanted to, because I was a really
L-
good copycat.
like a lighter tone.
It
Slightly
was
lighter.
it wasn't so much lighter, it was that all of those songs sat right in the middle of my voice. So I could
Got it.
do it for a little while, and then I'd get tired. So I went to him to figure out how to do that. So he taught me the proper ways of the proper techniques of supporting my voice, and it's very simple. It's very, very simple. It's intuitive, but you have to drill these things into your head. But I will say this, he's such a great teacher. One lesson with him, and I went back down to play my next show a few days later, and it was already a million times better from one
So
lesson with
so
this
it's
guy.
all about the mindset. It's like clicking,
Well,
and then you got it.
the thing about technique is, and learning how to sing better is understanding what singing is, and singing ultimately is communicating.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to communicate a song. You're trying to communicate words and an emotion that will reach other people. Because if you can't reach other people, it doesn't matter how technically good you are.
That's
So
it.
at the end of the day, you've got to be you've got to take two things into account. Singing is mental in two ways. It's mental from the standpoint that you have to be concentrating on your body to a degree,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also mental from the capacity, from the standpoint of the way you think about yourself and the way you think about what you're doing. So if you've got fears about your ability to just do what someone's telling you to do. So, in
Uh-huh.
other words, when I went to my first lesson, I was so ready to just do whatever he told me to do. I was I wasn't cocky. I didn't know everything. I had, he said, did say to me, you've for where you've come, for how young you are, you have figured out a very good way of singing. And
Mm-hmm.
then he just kind of like fixed everything, like
Puzzles.
yeah, for him it was like he had like this kit like a car, and he was going to
Uh-huh.
just put it he was going to put it together and put some fresh paint on it, and it was going to be like this. So I just took it in. Everything he said, I didn't have any thoughts like I can't do it. I didn't have any thoughts like, well, how do I do it? I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have thoughts like to me it was like he said something, I did it. It was like boom, boom. And that's what I try to relay to people when I work with singers. Often the biggest hurdle that I come across is they're not able to just do that.
Uh-huh.
They can't just hear, do this and do it. There's a little wall there between their
Y-
mental ability to say, oh, click. Now that sometimes is that I, as a coach, have to, like my teacher did, have to find sometimes different words or different ways of reaching different people, because everybody's different.
Yeah,
Not
that's
there's
true.
not one there isn't there's not one exact way to teach everybody. However, with my guy, he had a very definite technique, and he did not go away from it. And all the words that he used, I know a lot of people that have studied with him, and we all are used to the same
Mm-hmm.
words and the same things
Cool.
that he always said. Um, so so I went in and I said, I need to sing in the middle of my voice better. And he showed me basically how to support my voice, because I didn't know how to do, I was doing a pretty good job, but I didn't know how to do it exactly. So he showed me that, and he showed me how to place my voice properly.
Oh, that's the
Uh,
great thing to
yeah.
talk about.
But placement means nothing without support. It
Without
means
breathing, also.
without support, though, without support, a lot of people don't understand support. Support is probably the biggest missing link, and
That's for sure.
I'm not going to give away his technique, because that wouldn't be fair. But support is the biggest missing link that I see with all these um, teachers out there that are putting out tapes and videos and doing all this online stuff. They sort of get part of it, um, but they really don't get how the engine runs the car. They get a little bit of the speed and the steering wheel, but they don't have the engine hooked up, And
That's for sure.
if you don't have the engine hooked up, you're going to expend way too much energy on your singing, and you're going to blow your voice out because you're
For
not
sure.
controlling your energy properly. So when you sing, it should, when you have a good technique, you have signs. Like, if you're singing for a long time, um, let's say you have a tour and you're
Hmm.
doing the multiple nights, as long as you're taking care of your voice, drinking water, not eating late at night, and
Enough sleep.
sleep is huge. Yeah, I mean, so as long as you're doing the basic good things for yourself, and you're able to, because when you tour, you're not able to control everything. So
Yeah.
sometimes you don't get everything you need, and you just have to deal with it. But that's when you learn how to stop talking for certain lengths of time, and you learn to care for it. But what you should start to see, if your technique is good, is your voice should get stronger from show to show. So if you have like 3 or 4
Like
shows in a row,
opening from
it
show
should
to.
just get better. Like show 3, if your technique is good, it should be a better show vocally than show 1 in a group of shows. So that's a barometer. And I'm just running away with myself here, so you better ask me some questions, or I'm just going to keep
Okay,
talking.
so let me check because we have some huge things about the vocal, and so yeah, this basic parts like breathing, support, compression, also, and placement, and also this like a resonance, because when you are singing, you are using let's say this nasal quality, this more like like a pharynx resonation, like this middle part you were talking about, like the lower than its super high range, slightly lower. And have you like had you think and thought about this like nasal quality that's sitting right here before the class, before the lesson, or you just like placing and that's all?
I
That's
don't
all.
like to sing. I don't like to sing in my nose at all. I think it's a terrible thing to do. I try to sing back in my on my soft palate, way
Mhm.
back here. It's not in the throat. It's up here.
But do you
I don't.
feel
I don't. I
the?
don't.
But
I
do
don't
you
think it's
feel?
good. I don't. Some people sing up here and they do okay, but I don't like to do that. I don't
But
like
do
to
you
do that.
feel the airflow is going through the nose or only through
Um,
the mouth? That's the
I don't.
point.
I don't actually. The funny thing about me is I keep it simple. I don't analyze that too much.
Got it.
I've never really noticed it. What I'm doing when I'm singing is I'm using my ears, and I'm using my the way my body feels, and how everything is. I'm using my heart quite a bit too. I if I'm recording, for example, or singing live,
Hmm.
if I can hear everything properly, the delivery is all about finding a sweet spot tone, with a certain tone that you're trying to put across for that song you're singing,
Uh huh.
or that part of the song that you're singing. So for me, it's always about trying to find the perfect, sweet, emotional pocket that my voice can sit in, and then I can manipulate it a little bit to kind of do what I want it to do. But my tone, the thing that drives my tone is pure emotion,
Got it.
and the technique. Here's the thing about technique. I've worked with singers that are serial. They're like, I call them serial vocal students. They go from one teacher to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and they never get anywhere. Um, it's like students that stay in college until they're 50 years old, and
Got it.
they never actually started to work at anything.
Got it.
It's not the way to go. Technique, as I learned myself with my teacher, and what I wanted to do in the first place was, I didn't want technique to take over. I wanted it to be there as a tool, and then learn everything, learn it really well, focus when I'm doing my lessons, and then
Mm-hmm.
forget it. And then forget it. Completely let it go.
Just sing.
I still do everything I'm supposed to do. I warm up. I have some new things that I utilize that are amazing. But only one, actually, one main new thing that I've added to
Oh,
my.
that's interesting. What's that?
Yeah, otherwise, I haven't changed anything since I was 18 years old about my approach to the technique.
Mm-hmm.
But my singing has changed, and I've learned, and I've grown a lot as a singer, because I've life happens, and you learn a lot of things listening to other people, and learning from your own singing, you learn how to be better getting your emotions across and singing notes a certain way. You change from time to time. You should
Mm-hmm.
grow. The things, little things you do when you sing might change and grow as time goes. You might hear something from another singer. You don't even realize it
Yeah.
gets planted in your head, and then it comes out in a song, and you listen back. Oh, that's interesting. Where did that come from? When you try too hard and you think too much, you're in trouble. And
Like
when I get
overcomplicated
on,
stuff, like you just
well,
stuck in like too much thinking, and you're not singing. You are
that's right.
overthinking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it starts to become very technical and very sterile, and
Yeah.
it's not interesting anymore because I don't care how great a singer sounds. He could be the most brilliant technical singer I've ever heard in my life, but if
Without
there's
connection to the audience.
without any without any heart or vibe, I'm bored. I'd rather listen to Bob Dylan or Lou Reed or any number of people that have all emotion and maybe no voice, but it's more interesting, you know.
Got it.
And here's the thing too. When I was young, there was a period of time where I only listened to singers that I related to. So they had to have a high voice. They had to have some kind of tonality that was similar to mine. And I was, only listening to guys like that so I could soak all that up. It was okay. The downside of that I learned later was to dig into voices more that were different than me, that had different approaches, that had different tonalities, that did things I maybe couldn't do or that I
Mm-hmm.
could try to do or add, Um, guys that didn't have big ranges. Because look at it this way: if you have a big range, it's almost like you have so much to work with that if you don't learn how to sing a song without and just this is I think this is the greatest thing that I've learned over time that I think really if I'm proud of anything, it's that I'm getting better at this one thing as
Mm-hmm.
time goes on, and that's to just sing the song. You have if you write a great melody and you have good lyrics, just sing the song. Don't If you start to do too much, it
Like a
takes
demo version,
away.
you mean?
What?
Like a demo version, like I can do this,
No,
I can do, or
no. Like sometimes you'll hear singers that they just sort of I call it over singing, where they can't stick to the melody. They're always woo,
riffs, rounds, trills, like
all
got
over
it.
the place. It's great. It's not that it's bad to do that, but like if it takes away from the beauty of a melody. I mean, hey, look,
Uh-huh.
for me, there's no better songwriter than Paul McCartney, right? So if you think about his great songs, you could easily ruin a song like Yesterday
Mm-hmm.
by singing too much. You have this great melody, stick to the melody, get the melody across.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can go, of course you can go places, but it's important that you really sing the song and get that raw, simple emotion across,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes let things just be, be simple. You don't have to have vibrato. Even if you've got beautiful vibrato, you don't have to have it on every note. Leave it alone. You don't have to sing every note long. Maybe do a short one once in a while. You don't have to go high all the time. Save things so that they're special. That's something that I learned because when I was younger, I was singing like I was in a I was singing like I was in the Olympics and I had to win a gold medal. I mean, that was my approach on the early TNT records was go for everything all the time.
Got it.
I still was able to maintain, the simplicity, but I mean, to me, I think, I mean, I know people love it, and I mean, I'm proud of all that we did, but I think I was young and I was out to prove something, um, and I think I'm still out to prove something to myself, but not so much to other people. But I think it's important, though, to bring it back to what I was trying to say. I think it's important to um, learn a technique and learn it well and really have it down. Believe me, study when you're practicing and when you're working with a coach. If it's working, learn it and leave it.
Yeah.
When you're warming up for that half hour that you warm up, which is about what I feel is a good warm up time, warm up, focus, concentrate, get your voice where you want it to be, and leave it.
That's
I,
pure
I,
emotion.
I very rarely think about technique on stage because it's in my body.
Now it's
It's
like
so
a second nature because it's like
second
it's
nature.
trained.
It's like talking. It's like talking
Yeah.
or walking. And that allows me to use it, but it allows me to have the emotion using the technique rather than the
Uh-huh.
technique using the
Got it.
emotion. If that makes any sense at
And
all.
and tell me about the cooling down because that's the point where nobody can say about because oh I need to warm up my voice. Okay, now I'm feel comfortably. I can like belt and stuff like that. And after the gig, after the show, after the rehearsal, even to cool down the voice, I think it's super important.
Everybody's different. I didn't learn that. So, but what I did learn was taking breaks. So,
Vocal
uh,
rest.
well, and even short breaks. So, for example, when I would go in for my voice lessons, there would commonly be 5 minute breaks during the
Mm-hmm.
during the lesson. So we would warm up to a certain point when I would start to push my upper register.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would like to take about a 5 minute break to let the vocal cords rest for a minute. And
Mm-hmm.
then when we would come back after that break, the voice was always really strong because now
Cool.
you've done the warm up, you've taken 5 minutes just to let it sit, talk a little bit, and then you come back. I mean, this is why when people are struggling vocally, when they're warming up or they're having a day when they need to sing, they often the biggest mistake singers make is they judge their voices too harshly by how it sounds right when they start. And that's a
Yeah.
huge mistake. Never judge your voice by what it sounds like during a warm up or right when you start singing. Warm up carefully, gently, take breaks. When I'm having a day when things are crusty or rusty,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I'll sing for very gently for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, take a break, sing another 10 minutes, take a break, sing another, and so on.
Like sets.
I might extend my warm up on a bad day to an hour instead of a half hour, or maybe more. I might sing an hour solid, get everything open, and then take a half hour break before the show. Sometimes even an hour, and
Mm-hmm.
then but not too much. But a half hour is about right. And then if your show is delayed, which often happens,
Mm-hmm.
then I'll sing. Then I'll just sort of do what I call vocal acrobatics, maybe for a couple of minutes every 10 minutes before I go on stage. But I've already done my warm up. Everything's okay. A big mistake a lot of singers do is they warm up too much before the show,
Yeah,
and
and it's
they
like a workout. It's not a warm up.
yeah
It's like
no
they just working.
and
They
they
just
leave it in the dressing room. They
yeah.
go on stage and it's gone. So you've got to warm up just enough. And if you're singing every day live, you shouldn't really need to do a lot of crazy warming up.
Mm-hmm.
Save it for the stage because as the show goes on, you will get stronger. You want to come out strong, but you don't want to blow it all up backstage.
Okay. And just a couple of things about like the breathing. What's the basic breathing your key to success from
Well,
the last
it's good.
years
I
and
mean, there's a couple of things. One is you should probably be doing some form of exercise to build your breathing up.
hmm
Just any whatever exercise, whatever cardio you like to do is even walking
hmm
is good for your breathing. But a little bit of cardio every day is good for your breathing. But when it comes to singing, it's really simple. Just breathe like you do when you talk, you
hmm
know, and breathe musically. Don't think about breathing. I've had people like not breathe, which is crazy. Like they'll try to like link like phrases together without
Yeah.
breathing. I'm like, breathe. There's little, even if there's this much space, as long as you're not interrupting the flow of a phrase. I
It's
hate
like a
that.
runner. It's like
Yeah,
one foot another, and it's like a, like the story. So it's like a basketball. In my mindset, it's like
yeah.
between the phrases. So yeah.
I mean, live is always a different animal because if you're nervous, or which is understandable, I get nervous sometimes. If you're nervous or tired or sick or whatever, and you need to take extra breath, where you wouldn't do it on an album. So, like for an album, you want everything to be really smooth.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to take unnecessary breaths in the middle of a nice phrase that would ruin it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But live, it's better to take a breath where you wouldn't take a breath and sing well than not take a breath and sing badly. So
Oh,
you
that's
can
a great advice.
yeah, so you should always go for doing whatever you need to do live in order to sing good notes, and don't try to be tricky, just do what you need to do to sing good notes, because at the end of the day the audience probably won't notice the little breath you had to take.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to notice a great note you hit more.
That's for
So
sure.
it's more important to do
And
that.
about
But
the breathing, the problem is a lot of the times my students, like, they are not taking the breath and they saying, "Oh, that's the position," and I'm afraid of losing. So it's like,
oh,
quiet, and
well,
that's
that's
the
where
crazy
that's
thing.
I understand that, and that's just where they have to learn how to reset real fast. As
Exactly.
long as long as they're set, then when you take a breath, you just reset right there again. You don't change anything. You
Like
don't let
a
everything drop
tension
down. But
management.
that starts to get into detail that I would probably do, work on when I was working with singers.
Mhm.
But some of the biggest things out there that are I think hurting a lot of singers is all these modern catchphrases that are being used by a lot of these online vocal coaches, or even not online vocal coaches, that are trying to modernize something that doesn't really need to be modernized. So, like, my teacher uh, utilizes very old, probably based in bel canto techniques,
Mhm.
and think about it. Back in the 1700s, or 1700s especially, they didn't have the ability to look at the vocal cords and see what was going on.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Everything was based on conceptual thinking. So it was all about shapes, and the instruction was based on conceptual thinking. So it was like, see a shape and approach it from above, and this and that. Everything was like that way, and it was simple, and it was more like the instructor was there to say, get more of this, get on top of it more, open it up more, uh, you know, bear down on your support. All
Mhm.
these little things that you do. When you start getting into too much anatomy, and you start giving singers too much information about what their vocal cords are doing, or it's okay to have a little bit, but when you start giving them too much information and use too many fancy words, I think it's confusing and it gets in the way. I think the best way to get to a singer and really get them to make progress is keep it simple. Keeping it
Great.
simple, and not using all these fancy words that they're putting out there now. Um, just really simplicity and conceptual thinking. And because, again, singers really don't, they just want to get better, and they just want to sing the way they're used to singing. Um, and they just want to, like, improve their technique so they can expand their style and their emotional delivery, and so on and so on. And that's what I try to, when I coach singers, I try to just really push. If someone's having a hard time singing and it's starting to sound really mechanical, and they start falling out of uh, the act of singing, because let's face
Mhm.
it, singing is a form of acting.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So when they fall away from that, I just stop and I say, let's start again. And I want you to get back to the love that you have
Uh-huh.
for singing, because you're getting, the further away you get from the love of singing, the further you're going to get away from the technical aspect of it. So it's always important that even when you're even when you're doing technical stuff and learning how to do something better, there always has to be a small or a big element of the joy.
Yeah.
The joy of singing has to be there as all the time, and that's what's going to make the technique better. It works like a circle. It's like when you study and you're focusing, or you're practicing and you're focusing on technique, which I still do when I do my warm up. I took the old cassette tape from my teacher, and I
Oh,
digitized it so that I have it on my phone, right? So I still listen to old warm-ups that were really good,
that's
And
great.
when I warm up, I'm putting a lot of attention. I can hear his voice correcting me, which is great. He's saying the right things at the right time, even though
Which
it's
year
years
that
ago.
was?
Well, I've got a few of them. One of the ones I listen to is from probably in the 90s or something.
Man, that's
And
that's huge piece of
yeah, but
technique.
it's good because he's got all these little reminders in there, and I just go, it strengthens my technique.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm warming up, I don't just warm up and mindlessly. Yeah, sometimes I'm walking around, sometimes I'm getting ready for a show while I'm singing, but I try to stop and I try to focus on what he's saying, and I try to every day, and I try to focus on all the
That's
things that I
great,
need to
man.
do, so that then I don't have to think about it. And when I do that, my voice gets better, my singing gets better, and my technique gets stronger, and
Awesome.
and so that's the thing. But again, focus when you're practicing, focus when you're working with your teacher, and then forget it all.
When you're
Let it
singing live, especially.
let it go. Let it go.
Man, just about support, because that's the really like the main problem. And I heard tons of like you should suck in. That's the worst thing ever. Like, for me it's really simple. Like, you need to like you should lock the abdominal muscles, and you just need to press down, because my father is a wind player, and since my childhood he was sitting and like super long notes with support. And when I was singing like Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin when I was a kid, because that was in my house, and like Child in Time, and he said, oh, that's great, but support more, just press it down, like release
Yeah.
the throat. And for me it was, I wasn't taught about this. It was like since my childhood. And now when I'm teaching, it's like, suck in. No, you need to press forward, like super weird thing. And it's super simple. Like, you
I
need to
mean,
feel this, and then it's
yeah.
simple. But when you don't feel this, it's like,
Yeah, I mean, the simplest thing is when you're singing, always breathe in through your mouth, because that's where you're singing from. When you're not singing, try to breathe in through your nose so that you're not drying your voice out.
yeah,
But when you're singing, always through the mouth, because that's every. Some people don't do that. That's just the
I know.
strangest. It's a strange thing, but they breathe in through their nose when they're singing, which is the most bizarre thing ever. But so always through the mouth. And
And the action of support
as far as
for you.
support goes, one thing I notice when I'm looking at singers this way is when they start to get to like their jaw, they're singing
Yeah.
into their neck, they're singing into their jaw, they're
And
tight,
yeah.
everything's tight,
And it's all about the energy. The energy is put here, or you just, that's the energy, that's the engine, and you are working right from here. So yeah.
Everything. When you're singing properly, you should actually not even really feel all that much in
Mm-hmm.
your head and in your neck and in your mouth. I mean, well, not in your mouth, but you're going to feel the buzz on the roof of your mouth. That's a whole other thing. But you should just feel very very almost unaware of your up here.
Mm-hmm.
All the pressure is down as low as you can possibly.
Correct.
uh,
Yeah.
your support is all the way down into the lowest possible place. So I hate to use this, but it's the way it is it's the same. if you're constipated and that's the lowest possible place along the pubic hair is where you should be supporting, as low as you can get, not up here.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of teachers they're like up here. That's not a good at all.
Yeah, because
That's
that's the solar
shallow.
plexus, and if you will strain
Shallow.
here, you will lock the chords. I know this
It's
stuff. So
shallow. The lower you breathe,
yeah,
it pushes the voice upward. So if you push down, people don't realize if you push down, the lower you push, it'll push your voice up. It's like
exact
a,
like
it's like
this.
a, like it's like push down, voice up. But
Exactly. Yeah,
there's a
that's
lot
it,
more. There's
bro.
a lot more to it than that. But that's definitely one aspect of it. Um, but at the end of the day, I really think it always comes back to because you do hear all the time when you watch and I really need to say this, as much experience as I have, um, uh, that doesn't guarantee a great show, and that doesn't guarantee that I'm not going to be sick, or my voice is going to be tired, or I'm going to be nervous. It doesn't guarantee that I'm going to be perfect every night. I have bad nights like everybody else because I'm still human. But
Exactly. It's not a robot thing.
what happens is over time, and I'm still figuring this out, is you learn how to work around what your voice feels like on that day.
Uh
So
huh.
the more you perform, the more you understand the way your voice feels, and you can sort of say, okay, so my voice is doing that weird thing, or it's doing that you recognize,
Uh huh.
or it's doing that weird thing tonight that you recognize, and then you do things with your songs where you work around that. Because if you're having a perfect night and everything feels great, then you're going to go for everything. But if you're having a night where there's this issue or that issue, then you're going to sing your best, and you're going to go around all the issues, and
Yeah.
you're going to try to do things that are special using the obstacles. And this is something that I try to enforce. I can't stand when people cancel lessons or don't want to sing because they're a little sick or something. I make them do it anyway, because if you're gonna tour, or you're gonna sing live, even have a studio session booked, you can't always cancel it.
Exactly.
Sometimes you have to do it anyway, and it's really great to learn how to sing through things, even when you're not feeling perfect.
Because that's
So
not a theory, and this style of teaching, that's great. The same I try to do with my students without, oh, I'm sick just a little bit, but go for it, warm up more and try to. But if you are singing correctly, like breathing, supporting, compressing, placing, even if you are sick, or it's more comfortable, and you know what you to be aware of, I think, in this direction.
right, you know, um, yeah. So I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think the most important thing that I could say is like I said, is just to repeat what I said before, is just learn. First of all, how do you know when you have a good teacher? I mean, that's a big thing. And there are so many out there that are really hurting voices, or just not, doing much for people. And I've had people work with, I'm not saying that I'm, the greatest teacher or the greatest vocal coach. I don't like to call myself a vocal teacher. I like to say coach, because I sort of deal with things in a unique way.
Hmm.
I take everything into consideration, and I use my instincts, and I don't have just one way of working with people. It's always a little different, but what I want to say is that I've had people take one or maybe four lessons, because I do often these sort of 4 lesson packages,
Hmm. Hmm.
and and at the end of it, they have unreasonable expectations of what they're trying to get, um, and what I mean by that is often they're going, like I said before, they're going from teacher to teacher to teacher to teacher to teacher, and they're never actually getting anywhere, because and you can tell when you're working with them, they don't listen, and they're referring to other teachers.
Yeah.
Well, this guy said, and I'm like, well, when we're here, see if you can just That's great, and maybe you can apply some of that other stuff when you put it all together. But right now, when you're here, just try to like take this as you know, be here in this moment, and just try to take in what's happening here, because it'll confuse you otherwise. You know, it's sort of like if you're studying with a teacher and you're happy, and you start to go off into working with somebody else, it's a very dangerous thing to do.
Exactly. And other thing is like that's the point A and that's the point B. And one teacher has its own concept and that's the path and in the end you'll be there. Another
Maybe,
like this. And
maybe
and
you
now
might not be
like
there.
YouTube thousands of videos and like he said about this no he and it's like super confusing and you're like 10 years 15 years 20 years without actual singing you're just stuck in
You
okay
know,
that's thyroid note okay that's the glottal compression.
I feel so bad for young singers who want to get better, and and especially if they don't live in places like New York City or Los Angeles or, you know, Boston, or places where they have a big concentration of really good vocal teachers.
Santa
Um,
Monica, that's like awesome. one
well,
meter one meter one
Yeah, LA in general, you know,
Yeah,
and New York City. New York City has, I mean, some of the absolute best. My teacher, for example, but I feel sorry for them because they're left at the mercy of these guys online that really have no legitimate training. Everything they do is based on, uh, you know, just putting together a mishmash of things and trying to make it work somehow. And they really, there are a few out there that are promoting themselves really heavily, and I really advise people to stay away. And then they're going to say to me, "Well, what do we do?" And I
it's more
say,
like a
"Well,
marketing rather than teaching
yeah,
and love
I think,
of singing.
I'll tell you, I think they're far better off learning how to listen to their favorite singers, and listen to singers with good technique, learn how to listen to them and try to take from them naturally and apply it. I think they're much better off doing that than trying to spend money on somebody that has no idea what they're doing, and they're just going to take them off into you know, all kinds of crazy places and down rabbit holes. And it's they're better off trusting their instincts and listening to it. If they can't get to a quality teacher, and honestly, there really aren't a lot of teachers that I recommend to people, because if I find one has some good qualities, there might be probably missing something else.
Yeah,
And I have yet to find anybody, and I know they're out there. They have to be, but I don't know anybody that's as good as mine. And I'm not saying that because he's mine. I just got lucky, and I'm so blessed
cool.
that my mother found this guy, and his reputation now proves that she was right, and that he
That's
was
great.
as that he was brilliant. But you know, everything comes back to simplicity. And so that's what I think is the most important thing for singers is don't get caught up in all these catchphrases and uh, you know, modernization of a technique that has worked for centuries. If they keep it simple, and they follow their instincts and trust their instincts, and listen to singers that if they like the way somebody is doing something, then try to get into that spirit and try to translate that themselves. Don't waste money, and don't get caught up with you know, with these guys that really are going to potentially not just take your money but potentially ruin your voice,
Yeah.
and or you know, best case scenario, just not get you anywhere, you know. So just the basics, really basic vocal care. uh, what do you want to avoid? Everybody knows these things, but I'm going to say them anyway. You want to avoid things like acid reflux. So what do? You don't eat late at night. You don't eat spicy food before a show. Uh, those kinds of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, drink as much water as you can stand to drink throughout the day, as much as you can. Hydration, obviously huge for the vocal cords. Uh, avoid anything that'll dry you out if you can. Try to stay humid in a humid environment. Get a humidifier if you can. Put it by your bed so you sleep with humidity all night long.
What about
And
steam inhalation?
yeah, that's great. That's always good. That's never a bad thing. Just make sure the steam and the water is from a good source and there's no bacteria in
Mm-hmm.
the whatever you're steaming from.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I do now, in addition to warming up, is I use this magical thing here called
Great.
this is actually the brand of this is called Pocket Box, but it's actually it's made by a company called DocVox,
Mm-hmm.
and you just basically warm up by
I had like recently a year ago I had a course with this. So
yeah, but
it's
that's is that the same thing or is it a different one? I
uh
see. Okay.
no
So you
it's
blow into it while you're
yeah,
singing, right?
exactly.
Yeah. This is an old it's not that old, but it's a European developed system and they have glass ones. This is great because it's portable. You can put it
Great.
in any water bottle and you're just trying to get pressure. So you put as
Yeah.
much water as you, and this here has changed my life. It has, I do same, almost the same warm-ups that I do when I'm not using it. And the
Mm-hmm.
great thing is you can be quiet, it
Exactly.
stimulates, and now they have a mask you can put on where you can actually open your voice and say words and
Mm-hmm.
sing and get the pressure as well from the water.
Cool.
But I highly recommend this. It stimulates your vocal cords. It vibrates any phlegm you have off the cords.
And you don't need
Um,
to push. It's more like a
you don't
semi-occluded
need to
thin.
you don't need to push. It's very healthy, and it actually
Yeah.
will repair. It'll repair your voice as well if you're having vocal problems
Yeah.
over a
To
period of
zip up
time.
the chords in the
Yeah,
zero. Yeah.
yeah, it'll actually, it's almost like natural steroids, because
Yeah.
a lot of people will use steroids if they're having vocal problems, and in a big emergency, that's what you do. But this is incredible. It has, I think it's given my voice in many ways new life, and it's gotten me through so many shows where I didn't think I'd get through them. So I can't recommend it enough. I I I uh, I just really never. I don't believe in anything. I believe in water, sleep, good food, and a good simple technique. This is the first thing and only thing that's come along where I say, okay, it works. I can feel it. I've used and it works. And
Cool.
otherwise, keep it simple. And this is simple. It's
Yeah, for
not
sure.
anything fancy at all.
Just the
It's nothing.
pressure of water, and
It's
that's it.
yeah. It's just it's an amazing thing. So that's it. Otherwise,
Cool.
everything I said before is my approach.
Got it. Man, that was just great, and thanks for sharing all this info. Enjoying to meet you, bro, and
Thank
thanks a
you.
lot, bro.
Hey, great
Thanks.
to meet you, Alex, and thank you very much.